Okay, so there's a lot of ways to source products for yourself. I want to focus on this section about some unusual ways or not so manufacturer direct ways. We're going to also be doing sections on drop shipping and dealing with liquidators. And then we also have a product sourcing platform section. But this is a collection of more minor methods of sourcing products for yourself. And they don't have to be minor. They can be extremely lucrative. And for instance, they are selling for others, selling from local makers. So you find a local manufacturer. You can salvage and repair products and then sell those. And then you can perform what I call an arbitrage transaction. Arbitrage transaction, which will be our final one, is an excellent way to have an independent business that is self-contained. And while it has its own challenges, it's a great way to make money. So let me go through them. The first one is selling for others. You know, when I got started selling on eBay, I met a guy who had his own small boat. And he said, you know, I'd like to sell my boat. And I said, all right, let me try selling it for you. It was a nice boat. It was a fishing boat. And we ended up selling it for $5,700, $5,750. And the deposit on it was $750. And then he told me ahead of time that he wanted $5,000 for it. So I got to keep that deposit. When that $750 came in, that was my money. And it took me about 2 days. And I made $750 for 2 days of work. The guy came, put $5,000 in the hand of this man directly. We all meet at the same time. And everybody walked away. It was a great transaction. And he recommended to me another man with a boat. This was a much larger boat, and the guy wanted $15,000 for it. We ended up getting an offer for $16,000. I was able to keep $1,000, and I was able to sell the boat for $15,000 as the guy requested. No negotiation whatsoever. And then I found a man in my local community who was selling a classic car. And I spoke to him and I said, hey, can I sell this car for you? Now this is an example of when this process actually doesn't work. He said he wanted $6,000. The highest offer I could get for it was $4,500. And I got to make something, so the most I could offer him was, say, let's say $4,000. And he would not take it. So there is some risk because I had to pay marketing costs, and you know, at the time, listing a car on eBay had certain fees, and that's just part of the game. So you have to take the risks into account. You know, estate sales, garage sales. You know, people that you know, people who have collections of things, some people you might want to look for, and some of these might sound like a little bit callous options, but when somebody dies, approach the family, see what they have, see what they'd like to get rid of. It doesn't hurt to ask. It's probably a blessing to them if they're looking for money for the funeral, etc. When someone divorces, approach them. They'll probably be more than glad to talk to you. How you're going to find out about it is up to you. Maybe talk to a divorce lawyer, you know, offer them a kickback on whatever you sell, something like this. When someone retires, when you find out about a retirement party, you know, you see it in the newspaper sometimes. This person is retiring after 30 years at this company. Approach them. Hey, I know you're going to need money for your retirement. Is there anything I can sell for you? Anything you'd like to get rid of? Maybe they're going to move down to Florida, so you need to help them offload of some of what they have. When somebody experiences any sort of tragedy, ask them, can I sell something for you? You're going to need money. It's a little bit shadowy in a sense to hope for people's misfortune, but from their perspective, it could be a blessing in disguise. Antique stores have a lot of opportunities to, you know, because they can negotiate with you on anything that they sell. And they have catalogs of stuff that nobody else can find. And oftentimes they're old school people. And so maybe they're not so internet savvy. And maybe you can help them really move some supply. Or if they are internet savvy, maybe you can just take up that role to represent them and you are responsible for that. And they can lean on you and have time for other things, because these are people too. Antique stores is a real good one, actually. But you need to find somebody who's flexible in price, because if you have a very strict person, you might not make much money. Garage sales, like I said, and find products in places that aren't obvious, and you'll reap uncommon results. So the second way I want to talk about is salvage and repair. This is probably the business where I've earned the most money in my life. I have been dealing with MacBooks for years. We buy them either from users who say, hey, I have a broken MacBook, I'd like to sell it. We buy that. Or we get it from warranty dealers. We get a lot more units from warranty dealers, but we still keep our ear to the ground for individual units. And we pay close attention to the language that they use when they mention the units that they have. Why doesn't it work? Does it turn on? Is there a sound coming from it? What's the condition of the casing? Do you know how it was damaged? Was there liquid spilled on it? Was it dropped? And so you become very attuned to the different qualifications that are associated with the manifest. And we would take them, and there's a repair shop that I worked with, and then I would be responsible for selling it. So I was involved in buying and selling, and then the repair shop was responsible for the processing. And this has made a good amount of money for me. It's a simple business model. And sometimes when we get one that we can't fix, supposing we buy 100 from the warranty dealer and we get one that can't be fixed, we break it down and we can sell the shell, and we can sell the screen if it's still working, or we can sell the keyboard. Or if the logic board isn't damaged, which is usually the problem when you can't fix it, let's suppose the logic board is what's damaged. Maybe we can still sell the hard drive. Maybe we can still sell the RAM chips, the fan housing. Usually we can almost at least get our money back. Usually we can almost break even on that unit. And it's the same with cars. You could buy broken cars, you can buy broken cell phones if you know how to fix them, or you can set up a system where somebody else fixes them and you split up the profit that you make when you sell it. But then you can go the other way, and I think in a way I almost mentioned it. You can buy things that are broken, not even try to fix them, and just harvest the parts. When houses are going to be torn down, they come in and they rip out all of the copper piping, and they melt it down and they reuse it, or they take the bricks, or they take the wood from the walls. They oftentimes don't just go bash the house down. They salvage what they can out of the house and sell that again. Cars can be salvaged. Supposing the radiator block on a car has been cracked because it overheated too much, you can still sell the interior components. Depends on how old the car is and who's interested in parts from this model and year. Maybe you could still sell the alternator. If some parts are probably newer, you can take those out. They're used, but there's still something to get from them, and it's not a bad price to pay for the cost of doing the work to take it out. Doors, panels, sometimes tires, probably not, but maybe. It's just something to think about. Salvage and repair is a great way to source your products. It's kind of a lifestyle, so be prepared to commit to it. And then the third way, alternative, more obscure method for sourcing your products is going through local makers, homemade products. You can probably usually find, if you're in a town or city of any size, people who make things out of their garage, manufacture things out of their garage, leather works, clothing. Maybe they make cooked goods, cookies, pastries, things of this nature. Really, I'm sure you could find almost any kind of thing locally manufactured by a person who considers themselves an artist, or by a person who's trying to do something new. Somebody build their own computers in their garage, and maybe they have some advantage, some security advantage, or some sort of advanced capability, or they solved some problem that larger manufactured computers haven't thought of or don't take the time to do. There's some advantages to dealing with local makers, especially if it's a local manufacturer of any size. They can be more flexible. So if you need a product manufactured for you, dealing with local manufacturer provides you with some flexibility that you otherwise wouldn't encounter. You can talk face-to-face with the owner, with the machine operators. You can say what's wrong. You can say what you want. The lag time in communicating that is much shorter. Oftentimes, they'll let you come right onto the factory floor. If you're a big enough client, they might give you a pass card so you can come in whenever you want. You have greater control. I think that speaks to the same thing. The supply chain is reduced. Time and costs and mistakes. It's good for the community, and that's probably the reason I wanted to focus on this section the most. What's good for the community is good for you. Why do I say that? Because a manufacturer of any size is actually going to have a lot of community connections. They're going to know probably who the mayor of the town is. They're going to know probably who is the trade commissioner. They're going to know if you're in a company, in a city the size of Chicago, for instance, it might be a little bit more distance. But if you're in a city the size of Indianapolis, I'm sure community leaders all know each other. And dealing with a local manufacturer in any sort of meaningful way, you get to know that leader, and this leader would have access to all the other leaders. So it's a great way to build influence in your local community. And if you're like me, that's a really wonderful thing. And then the final thing is that it helps the environment. If you're dealing with a lot, maybe you can cut down on an entire boat size of shipments coming from China. And there's environmental costs to shipping, and there's environmental costs to trucks. There's environmental costs to the entire logistics process. And if you deal with a local maker, you can cut down on a lot of that. So just something to think about there. And then the final step that I really like is arbitrage. And I want to use the examples of selling MacBook Pros, used ones, again. When I was getting started, before we were fixing them, and even still some now, what we would do is, I realized on eBay, there's a difference between the buy it now price and the auction price. And sometimes that difference is 15 to 20%. And in terms of auctions, there is usually a price I could expect to get the Model 4 in the auction. However, in the buy it now price, which some people just prefer because it's faster, it's more determined, in the buy it now price, there was generally a price threshold that I could expect. If I sell it for this price, I'll be considered first whenever somebody wants to buy this model. In other words, I'm a good price for this computer. And so let's say there was a 2008 MacBook that I used to call the 466. There was a 466 and a 467. It was before they even called them MacBook Pros. They were just MacBooks. They were a more portable version, and people loved them. The 466 was half of the units that I sold. And I realized early on when I got started that I could get the 466 for somewhere between $500 and $550 on the auction price. And the going rate was $700. And then there was fees, and the unit would come to me, and then I would ship it to the customer. Well, in the end, I was able to make about $50 a unit. But then I realized that I could have it shipped from the person I bought it from directly to the customer, and I would just include a note in the message that said, please don't include a receipt. So the person who received it would never know that it didn't come from me. They would just know that it came from someone, and it's what they had purchased. And so I was able to get my profits up to about $75 this way, saving me about $25 off of shipping. And sometimes I could get it for a little bit better price in auction. And if it went beyond my $550 threshold, I just wouldn't buy it. I would say, that's one that got away. But there was like 30 of them coming off of auction every day. So that's what's called arbitrage, taking advantage of the two different forms of market. There's the auction market and the buy it now market. Other forms of arbitrage that you might be able to participate in are the difference between eBay and Amazon. eBay prices are a little bit lower than Amazon, but they're a little bit less dependable. And if you're willing to manage that risk, you can make money by buying off eBay and selling on Amazon. And the truth is, you can sell it before you buy it, because generally you can expect products to be coming off what I considered like an assembly line, or like lemmings marching towards the cliff. You can expect them to be coming off in a pretty uniform manner if it's a popular enough product. So the 466, there was one finishing like every hour off of auction all day long. So I didn't need to think about, can I get it? I know I'll be able to get it. And if it's not this hour, it'll be next hour. And if it's not next hour, it'll be next one, because that's just how averages work. They stay consistent. Now, over time, the max price that I could get started to come down. It went down to $650, but then the auction price generally went down to $500. And sometimes I would get it for $450. And when that happened, you know, I think the most I ever made from a single laptop that I sold that way was like $300. And I celebrated. It was a good day. And what that is that's arbitrage. You can take advantage of the difference in markets. Another example of arbitrage is just the basic sales process. You buy it from a manufacturer and you sell it on the retail market. There is technically an arbitrage there, but it's not as direct, you know, buying it from one retail source and selling it on another retail source. You can source things off of eBay and sell them directly on your website. Why does that work? Not everyone shops on eBay. Not everyone takes the time to do comparative shopping. You can buy things on sale price or clearance items and sell them on eBay or on your website. You can never predict what's going to be on the clearance shelf, and it doesn't last long on the clearance shelf, so you will need to buy it first. But there is an opportunity there for an arbitrage. And these are just some of the alternative ways. In the next few sections, I'm going to do a section on drop shipping and dealing with liquidators. Both of those are very good sections. I highly recommend you watch them. Before this section, there's a section on product sourcing platforms that if you want to get a brand new product to sell, this is where you would go. So thank you for watching.